Hello, welcome to our table. What is up? We are so excited to have y'all today. It's been a little bit since we've seen you, so we're excited to have you. We have some cool stuff to talk about today. Just want to remind you real quick, follow us on Facebook, Our Table. Follow us on YouTube, on your favorite, sorry, I have a long hair. On your favorite streaming for podcast. Like, seriously, there's hair all over me. Okay. I'm like postpartum shedding.
This is raw and unedited.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, follow us. We'd love to have you part of our table and our little family that we have, and we'd be more than happy to include you in the conversation. But hashtag no agenda, only Jesus, and hashtag Our Table Podcast. Yeah. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you. And hey, if y'all have any ideas of things you want to talk about, anything you want to hear from us, anything you want us to teach, more so Kenneth, he loves to teach, he loves to preach. So anything that you want to hear him talk about, or it can be worship related, life related, spiritual, just like deep spiritual things. I mean, anything. We're open to it. So but
nothing is off the table.
Oh,
nice.
So we have a treat for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about Kenneth, his journey through forgiveness and how he kind of got there. He's going to share some backstory with us of just kind of what he's been through probably in the past, 10 years or so.
Yeah, it's 9 years.
Yeah, 9 years. Well, it probably kind of started before that,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I would say roughly 10 years or so. And he's going to share with us a little bit about, just his family and his sister, and just kind of like what the Lord's brought him out of, and just kind of looking back of the miracle that the Lord's done in his family and him. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, if you just want to kind of give us a little bit of the backstory, and we'll just kind of go from there.
So first and foremost, we're going to be talking about my sister Kasie today. And just right off the bat, just to kind of tell you, just to give you some context, my sister passed away in 2013. And so I'm going to be sharing a lot of, this is really my personal journey through this, into forgiveness for a lot of, and a lot of different aspects, should I say. And so, so I'm just going to be sharing a lot about that. I want to just put it out there. This is really like my journey. My mom, my dad, my other two sisters have all had different experiences and good ways of healing and the grieving process. And it's not really a fun thing to go through, obviously, but we all have our own journeys. And so I'm just going to be sharing mine. So this is me speaking from my heart and what I've gone through and just kind of experienced really a lot of the Lord's grace and his love for me and whatnot. So anyway, Kasie. So Kasie is my sister. There's 4 siblings in the Clary family. So there is Kendall, super, super, super old, like really old. I'm just kidding.
No.
No, she's not that old. She's like in her 30s. So but you have
which
Kendall,
is old. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, which is super old. So you have Kendall, and then there's Kasie, second child. You have me, the third child, and then Kristen, my youngest sister.
The baby.
And so, I mean, she's not a baby anymore as much. So she's 21.
She's still a baby.
So yeah, she's always going to be the baby. So I love my sisters. Anyway, so 4 siblings. We grew up not like hating each other, but there was like a rivalry, I think, between all of us.
Sure, your siblings.
Yeah. So, and being the only boy in the family, it was like, I was highly exposed to chick flicks and, all that stuff. And I really enjoyed being the only boy, actually. And now having 2 boys of my own, I feel like I get to be a rough
be the
house.
brother that you never
anyway,
never had.
So there's 4 siblings. Growing up, Kasie and I were we kind of argued a lot whenever we were really younger, and then it wasn't until I got to like eighth grade or so we started getting really close. And I would remember like she was a sophomore, junior, something like that, whenever I was in 8th grade. And so we would go I can't remember how it all started, but one day I was just like, I went into her room at like 10 at night or something, and we just started talking, and we talked for hours, and it was like our thing to do. Like for such a long time, we would go into a room, we would just talk just about the most random stuff, and in a very beautiful way, she ended up becoming like my best friend in a lot of things. And just being able to, and it's funny because I never would have thought I would be able to call Kasie my best friend growing up. Not that I hated my other sisters, but Kasie and I, we just grew really, really close. And I think for my other siblings as well, I think that, I think all the siblings were Kasie's best friend. You know what I mean? Like everyone was connected.
Everyone kind of
Kasie.
migrated toward her.
Yeah, we all connected to her in different ways. And so, we got really close. We would talk about a lot of things. Stuff we probably shouldn't have talked about. She exposed me to rap music growing up. So she was like, Kenneth, don't tell her mom and dad we're listening to rap music, but I'm going to show you rap music. And I'm like, oh yeah. And so we would be driving in her red truck going through the streets of Hillsboro, Texas, and, revving the bass in that thing, which wasn't much bass, but it was a lot of fun. But I loved like hanging out with Kasie and spending time with her. It was really cool because one of the really neat things I remember as we continue to get closer, as I kept on going into high school and whatnot, is she would refer to me as her best friend. And there was a time at like a softball game, because Kasie loved softball and played it through her whole life, softball, volleyball, but softball was the main thing. And I remember I was on the other side of the fence. Kasie was playing catch with her catcher because Kasie was a pitcher. And she looked at the catchers. It was Carly Miller. And she's like, hey, Carly, look, that's my best friend right there. And it's always like just stuck with me. And for whatever reason, I was like, wow, like she doesn't just say I'm her best friend. She's telling other people I'm her best friend. And so we just got really, really close. And, that relationship just continued to progress. We would kind of get into little arguments here and there as time went on, just as any sibling would. And for Kasie, the way in which like Kasie hated it whenever I wouldn't talk to her. She would hate it whenever I would shut down because I was her best friend. And so like I knew if she upset me and I wanted to make her mad and like basically show her without saying anything that I'm really upset with you, I just wouldn't talk to her. And there were a few times growing up where she'd come and she's like, why won't you talk to me? Like I don't understand what's going on. Like, I mean, I know I did this. I'm sorry. I said this about whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so anyone who knows Kasie knows like Kasie is very opinionated and very blunt.
To the point.
She does not reserve anything. So she is like, just to the point. And which isn't a great thing, but can also be like you never want to be on the receiving end of that. So it can be difficult. So anyways, but fast forwarding, I get into college, and Kasie she went to college in East Texas, and then she moved back to Hillsboro. And so, during this time in her life, she was she was just having, I guess, just like a hard time just figuring her way through life. I think just trying to put all the pieces together for her on the best way for her to live her life. And one of the things I can say, like Kasie loved the Lord. I remember I'd be in the youth band in like my senior year in high school or something, and she would come to youth as a college student just to come visit and say hi. Mm-hmm. And she loved the song You Never Let Go. And so anytime she would come, I would always make sure that we played that song. But she absolutely loved the Lord. Kasie's smile was like super infectious. That's like the one thing that I think everyone, whenever she passed, they said like, man, Kasie could make anyone smile just because she would smile, And so just a beautiful girl. And so anyways, this is like 2011, 2012 or so, just fast forwarding to that time for you guys. So in that time, my family, my senior year of high school, we were told like we had to move out and stuff. Kasie was living in college at the time. But just giving you some context of like what we were going through financially. We were told like we had to move out of the house that we were in because we weren't basically making payment. My parents protected us a lot from those financial struggles growing up. So I didn't even know it until I was told like we're moving in a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. But my parents did a great job at never at always making sure that we never experienced the weight of any bit of financial stress. And so, but they were struggling financially. And so we ended up moving to another house in Hillsborough, into a rent house. And at this point in time, Kasie ended up, she left college. I really can't remember why she left college. I don't know if she just didn't really like what she was doing or just needed a change of pace or something, but she came back to Hillsborough. And, she was, I think for a lot of us in our family, like our relationship with Kasie at different times would be strained. We would, because she was very, again, very, very blunt. She was going to do what Kasie wanted to do. And I think at some point in our lives, we've all done that. Mm-hmm. I mean, whenever I was a freshman in high school, I did not care a single thing about what I was doing. And I would yell at my parents. I mean, I was just rebellious. And at this point, Kasie always had a love for her family. Like her family was the number one priority. I specifically remember like how much she cared for Kristen mm-hmm. and how much she just absolutely adored Kristen and wanted to take care of her in all things. And almost and Kasie got that from my mom, just in a very motherly way of caring for Kristen. And so Kasie loved everybody in our family, but at different times, like the relationship would be strained because of, of decisions she would make that, maybe I wasn't happy with, or that Kendall wasn't happy with, or something, or, I mean, it would just be hard sometimes. And so there was always that rub of, we're struggling in our relationship, but now we're good. Mm-hmm. We're struggling, now we're good. And so, in 2012, so I started college that fall semester. I actually met Courtney that fall semester. So amazing part of the story, just meeting her, because that's always great. And so we, Kasie is living in Hillsborough. So actually, I don't think she was living with my parents at the time. She was dating somebody, and it was not a healthy relationship. And I remember whenever, because she was back and forth in this very unhealthy relationship. It was an abusive, like verbally abusive. I think possibly at times physically abusive too. And
yeah, I think there were a couple of times where there had been incidents that were filed for physical altercations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the one thing I knew about Kasie is like Kasie could definitely hold her own. Mm-hmm. Is the thing is like I would never like long to get into a fight with Kasie, like mm-hmm. desire to fist fight her or anything. She would let you have it, And so, but Kasie was finding herself in that situation. And I remember, we were working at Gap in Hillsborough, and I remember we were folding clothes and stuff. And this is one of the few times that she had left this individual. And she said, Kenneth, do not, like, I'm so glad I'm not with him anymore. Do not let me get back with him. I mean, my whole family was involved in this, mm-hmm. like, and really making sure, to protect Kasie and stuff. And I'm like, absolutely. I'm not going to let you get back with him, whatever I got to do. And so we ended up, time went on, and a few months, I don't know, however, a certain amount of time passed, and she ended up back together with this guy. And I remember my parents were really frustrated just because it obviously wasn't like an entirely safe situation for Kasie as well as our family. This person was a little unstable. And so, I was at that time in my life, I was very frustrated with Kasie. At this specific time, I had a lot of anger towards her. Mm-hmm. And so I knew the best way for Kasie to know that I'm upset with her is to not to say anything, and like not to speak a word to her. And so it's like so childish, but like I gave her the silent treatment. I remember, literally the day that I decided to, seeing Kasie, and she said, "Hey, Bubba," and I literally just walked right past her and didn't say anything. And that was like extremely, it felt awkward, but then it's, pride got in the way of like, no, Kenneth, stand your ground. Like, don't say a thing to her. She's got to know that you're upset. And really, like, looking back at it now, that was like very selfish of me, for me to, even if the events didn't happen later on, it was just very selfish. And so, and Courtney and I were dating this entire time. Courtney, actually, you never met Kasie.
Well, I met her. I met her one time. I was actually scared to meet her because of
all girlfriends were, so
of just like stories that Kenneth told me, just how close they were, but also just like, she is not scared to speak her mind. You're going to know where you stand with her, basically. And I liked Kenneth so much, so I was so nervous, and I think more so then than now, I was so like such a timid person of just like, I hate confrontation or I hate anything. And so I didn't want to say the wrong thing. But yeah, I went to hear you play at that church.
Yeah.
He played at a church, him and his band. And so I briefly met her, just hi. And I think that's the same time I met your mom and Kristen too. And so it was brief. And then throughout, those few months after that, if I was at its house or something, she would just stop by or whatever, and we'd kind of just say hi and smile at each other. But yeah.
And Kasie, she just she would always make an effort, but if you ever messed up as a girlfriend, like, she would not talk to you. She wouldn't just not talk to you. She would roll her eyes at you to where you could see her do it.
She took it to the next level.
Yeah, she was intent with all that. And so anyways, but so Courtney and I were dating during that time, and so Courtney never actually got to really develop a relationship with Kasie, which you'll come to see as we go on more into this, was something that was really hard for me, just knowing I didn't provide that opportunity for Courtney because of my selfishness. And so I at this time I stopped talking to Kasie, and not just for like days, but like months. I did not talk to Kasie for almost 6 months. Like, she would be in and out of our house, she would communicate with the rest of the family. I wouldn't talk to her. And so I was like, I've got to stand my ground. Like, because really in my head, I knew this will hurt her. And like,
well, I think you were looking for, I don't know that you were looking for like, I want to hurt her because I don't agree with what she's doing. I think it was more so you were trying to like, how do I shake her? How do I like wake her up to realize like, you have to get out of the cycle with this guy that you're with. You have to get out of this. And I think that was more so your intent, whether you realize it at the time or not. But it wasn't as much as like, I'm going to get back at her. But she asked you like, she told you, don't let me get back with this guy. And I think you were trying to uphold your end of like, okay, well, if you're going to be with this guy, I'm not going to talk to you type of thing. Like, you know what I mean? So it's almost kind of, I don't think it was you were trying to hurt her. I think it was that you were just trying to like, you have to make a decision and wake up, what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it was, it was definitely a whirlwind of emotions. It was like, I made it awkward for my family because they knew, and I told them I'm not talking to her and all this stuff. So it just wasn't the right thing to do, and it ended up being like one of the biggest regrets of my life is not talking to her because I only had one opportunity, thankfully, through my mom. She had texted Kasie and I saying, hey, you both need to fix something because your sister Kristen is starting to see. Kristen has always been a priority in our family. We just want to take care of her. And so my mom was like, Kristen is starting to notice and it's affecting her. And so I had actually reached out to Kasie in a text saying, hey, I'm frustrated. I've been frustrated, but I still love you. And she reciprocated that to me. I think she actually said like, I know, some of the choices I've made have not been easy. And, but I love you too. And so thankful for that time. And that my mom really, she didn't force us, but she just highly encouraged, and thankfully we had that opportunity. And so, but before that, Kasie and I, we had kind of a falling out around Christmas time 2012. It was that year, right? Yeah. Around 2012. And really, really bad falling out at our house. Not going to get into details of it. It was just bad. And so I ended up speaking up, and I had said things to her that was intentionally meant to hurt her, because, you know, when you're not talking for so long and then you finally talk after, you know, 5 months of not talking almost, or whatever, I think it was only 2 or 3 months at that point.
Yeah.
It bottles up. And so I let her have it. And so it just wasn't good for her or for I. My whole family was there. It was just bad. And so anyway, so we had that, and the relationship continued to be strained. Well, Kasie ended up finally leaving that one guy. He actually went to jail, I think, and ended up being in prison for, I'm not sure I can't remember if it was related to Kasie or not, but
I can't remember either.
Regardless, he ended up in prison. And so Kasie actually, it appeared, and this time it was early 2013, like, okay, something's changing. Like, you know, I remember she joined like a softball league and was playing softball, which was a huge passion of hers. And so she was just kind of not, I don't want to say getting her life together. She was just pursuing the good things of life that she was passionate about. During this time, we still weren't talking. And so, but come to find out, she actually ended up dating somebody else who was actually much worse. And this individual was, we did not know him, but come to find out, everyone we started talking to when Kasie went missing in April, when they heard that she was with this person, they were like, oh, this isn't good. And so our eyes started to kind of open up to some things. So anyways, sorry, I know I'm talking long on this. I promise I'll get to the point here, but she's with this individual. I did not know it. And then I just remember I was on my way to a band trip to somewhere in East Texas, I think to Marshall, actually. And so to Marshall, Texas. And we left early in the morning with my college group in this van, and like long day that the van broke down on the way up there. It took us from like 6:37 in the morning to get to Marshall by like 5:30 to 6. I mean, it took all day. And so I was exhausted. And I remember Courtney was texting me during that time, because, you know, during this time it was found that Kasie was,
so like a week prior to that,
right?
Kasie was playing at a softball game, right? And
I think so.
And your parents went, and then I think when your parents left, they said bye to Kasie. And then was it like the next day or
something happened where Kasie did not end up coming home?
Yeah.
And that just was, my parents noticed this was very out of character for Kasie, especially in the seasons. Like Kasie was, I think, living at home at that time.
Yeah, but I think somebody called.
I can't remember.
I think it was
honestly.
her boyfriend that called and basically was like, have you seen Kasie? Right?
I can't remember. I actually don't know if that's the case.
Okay, well, I hope I'm not speaking something that's not true. But anyway, sorry, you just recall what you remember. I don't want to add something to the story that's not.
It's fine. And yeah, sorry, some of the details are kind of foggy here, because during this time it was like a lot of stuff happened. So, but Kasie was missing already. Yeah. She was, and honestly, I thought she was
like somewhere around a week or so, right?
Yeah, I'm like, she just fell off the grid for a bit. I thought maybe she was going into a season of just like not wanting to talk to anybody. I remember my best friend, Joaquin, he had called me while I was driving to go see Courtney, actually, from Hillsboro. And I was driving to Burleson. He's like, hey, man, do you have a second? Like, you may need to pull over. And he's like, hey, I don't know if you know Casey's missing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know. And so I just didn't think anything of it, because to me, it didn't really seem out of the ordinary. And then, you know, a week goes by. I'm living at college at the time, so I'm not really seeing much.
Yeah.
Anyways, just wasn't around to see the whole detail of things. And then we make this band trip to Marshall. Yeah. And so Courtney, like, you're texting me because I think my mom had reached out to you, right?
Yeah. So I was actually supposed to go babysit that day, and I ended up having a stomach bug. And so I stayed home, which really the Lord worked it all out, because where I was babysitting, I didn't have good reception, so I wouldn't have been able to help at all. But his mom, Allison, reached out to me and basically asking if I knew where Kenneth was staying. But she didn't want me to reach out to Kenneth and ask him that, because she was trying to be sensitive to his feelings and just his reactions and stuff. So I was contacting everybody on the strip, and I'm like, hey, where are y'all staying? Like, no one would call me back or text me back. And it just seemed like a whirlwind, but finally I figured out where they were. And then kind of from there is whenever, your mom or there was a family friend basically that lived in the area, right?
Yeah.
That met Kenneth there.
Mm-hmm. And so I was, this was somebody that actually she was actually, I think, in Kendall's graduating class. Yeah, she's friends at Kendall, yeah. But she was really close to Kasie as well. And I hadn't seen this girl in many years. Her name was Robin, at the time, Robin Clarity. I can't remember her last name now. She's married. But we're at this buffet eating, and then I see Robin walk in, and I'm like, Robin, what's up? I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I can't believe you're here. And I could tell by her face, like she seemed troubled. And almost like she didn't know how to say what she was about to say, I think. Mm-hmm. And she said, hey, I need you to come with me real quick. And so I walked over there, and I said, I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I'm completely like unaware. And she said, they think they found Kasie. And I was like, okay. And she said they think they found her body. And I'm like, she just starts bawling her eyes out. I'm super confused. Right. Like I don't, it was very difficult. That was like the last thing you would expect. Yeah. And so I'm like, what the heck? Like, I don't know. I did not know what to think. It was, I don't know, like an out of body experience. I just didn't, I didn't start crying. Mm-hmm. I was just like, I was just shocked. Stunned. Yeah. To where, like, stunned in a way like no emotion was happening. Mm-hmm. It was just like dead silent in me. And so so anyway, I go to my band director, and it was actually interesting. The bus driver was a softball coach for Kasie growing up, and a pitching coach, I think, for her at a certain time. So we had actually talked about Kasie on the way up there. And so Robin said, hey, I'm going to take you, and your pastors are on the way up here to come pick you up. And I'm like, what the heck? So I go tell my my band director, I let him know, and then I get in the car with Robin, and pastors come take me home. I mean, I'm like in the back seat, like on the way home, fully awake, I did not know what to say, didn't know what to think or anything. And honestly, I don't really remember much whenever I got home. I just remember, my parents obviously very upset, because it wasn't fully confirmed it was Kasie. It was just highly probable that they found Kasie's body. And so, I remember, I think it was the very next morning, my mom said, I need to tell Kristen. And I think Kristen she was young, 10, 11, 12, something like that, yeah. 10 to 12, somewhere in there. And so it was 9 years ago. So yeah. Yeah. So I was sitting, my mom told me, like, we got to tell Kristen. And obviously, like, I cannot imagine what it would be like. I lost a sister. My parents lost a daughter. That's completely different, and the strength that my parents put forth in that time, even though they may not have felt very strong, I don't know how they did it, honestly, to be able to convey such a hard message. And so I remember sitting next to Kristen, and my mom began to tell her, my dad was in there too, and that they think that they found Kasie. And, Kristen just starts breaking down. Well, really it's all a blur. It felt like it took a week or something for stuff to happen, but I think it all happened in that day. Yeah, it was the day after you came back. I met you at your house, and
family was there. They came in really fast, and that's
everyone swarmed to
mhm.
that small Clary house at the time, and it was crazy. And I remember there was a police officer in Hillsborough. Hillsborough hadn't really dealt with, I don't think, really any homicide cases like this before, and so they were they had found, I think, Kasie's car and just a few other things, and it was suspecting that possibly her boyfriend may have murdered her. And so again, all I can think right now is I haven't talked to Kasie in 6 months. I had one time on a text, but I've been so stupid for the past 6 months to shut her off and not talk to her, to where I'm like, it really didn't hit me like she's not really gone. I was really almost in a sense like kind of waiting for her just to show up,
right?
A small like strand of hope, like she'll just walk in the door. Well, the police officer comes in, and man, that living room was packed with people. That's really all I remember. But I remember where I was sitting, and the police officer comes in and to basically tell us like that it was confirmed. It's confirmed that this was your daughter, that this was Kasie. And I heard it. You were there, right? Okay, sorry, it's hard to remember.
No, you're fine.
It was Kasie, and so I just remember sitting in that chair I was in, and I think everyone else pretty much knew. I was just in disbelief until I was going to hear it. And once I heard it, it took about 3 seconds, and immediately like 6 months worth of not talking to her. Sorry, I'm trying not to cry. Of not talking to her, and the emotions of that just like ended up pouring out. And so like I just started bawling my eyes out, like not really understanding what's going on. And I wasn't even mad. I wasn't mad at the person who had murdered her. And none of that. I remember the only thing I could think of was like, I just want my sister back. Like, that's it. I just want her back. I don't even really think I was really mad at God at that point. Yeah. At that point. And so, I'm struggling through that day, and it was a long process. I had a great support system. Again, my family, even though that it was their daughter, their sister who's going through it, like still, like everyone really supported each other. Our church at that time really came in and to help take care of us, and minister to us. That there was another church that I was working at that this was the same time as the West explosion that happened, and like a fertilizer plant or something that exploded, and it was really tragic. Well, the pastor of that church, was the church I was working at, his family ended up really losing their home. And the next week this stuff happens with Kasie, and he takes time out of his schedule
after his loss
to come see me. And
I remember there were so many people at your house, like constantly. And I mean, I wasn't even there the whole time because we'd only been dating for like 6 months. So
it's a lot to go through it for our relationship.
Well, but it was also like I was in a position to where it was like, I mean, we were serious. Like we knew how we felt about each other, but there's also like this, we're in college and stuff. And I did not want to be that girlfriend that was just like hanging around and making family feel a certain way or right. any of that. But also knowing that like, I am his girlfriend, and I wanted to be sure that like he was okay too. But anyway, I allowed him space as I felt was needed, and he even communicated sometimes. Like I think there was one night you went and stay at the hotel with your gran, and he just told me, he's like, I just think tonight I just need to be with family, and I was just like, I completely understand. Like I'll just hang out at the college tonight, like no big deal. You don't have to apologize at all. I totally get it. And so But yeah, I just remember there were so many people, and man, even at Kasie's funeral, so many people.
Yeah, a lot of people.
And like that church was packed out. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, and it went to show you, like, regardless of how you may have ever felt that Kasie treated you, she has such an amazing impact on people to where like hundreds of people came,
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of people. Like I've never seen the church as packed out as
I mean,
did.
I'm pretty sure there were people like standing, like
Yeah,
that couldn't get a seat.
There was
like,
there was a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
well, and that it doesn't only show the love just for Kasie, but the love the whole community had for your whole family too.
Yeah.
You know, like not everyone there had a super personal relationship with her,
Right.
but some, you know, everyone there had some type of relationship with somebody in your family. It just showed how much they support y'all, and like it was crazy, you know.
Yeah. It was. I remember being at her memorial service, and I think my Aunt B, she had a lot of people came in to relieve anything that they could off my parents, and she came in and she set up the whole front portion of the sanctuary, which it was a beautiful display to honor Kasie. And I remember I was sitting next to my mom during the service, and while there was a specific song going on that was special to our family for whenever we've had individuals pass away, it's been an ongoing song that we would have played. And I remember my mom just, even in the midst of that, like she raised her hand and worshiped, like the hardest thing to have to do. And she raised her hand and worship. And so that's really taught me a lot just in the worshiper on how I am today, just from that experience and seeing her do that. But yeah, so it was such a hard time. I was dealing with so much. I remember, you know, seeing each person in my immediate family dealing with it in their own way, which was difficult. Like I remember coming home, and that was just before the memorial service, but basically after we found out Kasie had passed and it was her body that was found, where my dad was outside mowing, and he was just like, Kasie loved to mow, and he just starts crying, and he was out there doing that. And I remember whenever the police officer, they found her car, and they returned her glove within the next, you know, few hours or so. Me and my dad went outside and played catch, and it was just I don't think anyone knew how to cope with it. We were just at that point, it just felt like existing, you know. It was the most difficult time, one of the most difficult times that I've ever had to go through. And so,
well, it's like a whirlwind of emotions too, because I remember even whenever I was over there, it's like, you know, it went from this heaviness to now we're like some people are sharing their stories about Kasie, and there's laughter and just remembering who, you know, who she is and the good times that y'all had. And then, you know, another wave of heaviness comes, and then another wave of just remembering and laughing, and like I can't imagine, you know. So.
Yeah, and it's it was difficult because we knew whenever you go through pain like that, there's people around. It's whenever they stop coming, which is just natural. You can't blame people for not coming anymore. Excuse me. But that's whenever we were almost waiting, like, when are they going to stop? Because that's whenever it's going to be very difficult. And so, you know, it hit in for all of us at different times. Just the pain of it. I mean, what was hard for me is, again, bringing it just very personally, like everyone knew. It wasn't just me and my family that knew my relationship with Kasie was strained. Every person that knew us, every person we worked with, everyone in the community who was close to our family knew me and Kasie did not talk. And I remember, you know, people would come up and try to console me in that and just say, there's one lady from our church, she came up. I just remember, I'm like, why did you just say it? You know, and but she said, you don't carry this with you. And I'm like, how can you tell me not? I didn't tell her this. I just bawled. And I'm thinking, how can you tell me not to carry this? Like, it is my fault that she's gone. That's all I could think of. Like, she told me not to let her get into that original relationship. And if I would have intervened, is what I was thinking. If I would have intervened, it would have possibly prevented her from being in this other one. If I just would have talked to her. And what's crazy to me, though, is there has been countless people who feel like it's their fault. Yeah,
I was going to say that too. I feel like a lot of people that I've talked to, you know, have mentioned at some point, like, if I would have done this, or if I could have said this, or if I would have tried a little bit harder, if I would have been more strict, or if I, you know, maybe would have voiced my opinion, or or would not have voiced my opinion, like maybe that would have, saved her or helped her.
Right.
And, it's like, I sometimes don't even know what to say to that, because it's like, I'm in no position to say if that would have changed the outcome or not, and I totally understand, even like with you, where you're coming from, like if I would have talked to her, like, was there something I could have said or something I could have done? Like, should I have been more stern with her? This, that, the other, but it's like, at the end of the day, you have no way of knowing. And I know, that now, but like, but at the time, like I'm sure that's, all you could think of,
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, just knowing that everyone was dealing with it in their own way, was no situation was perfectly alike for you to go to someone to be able to get advice on how to get through it, because everyone's dealing with it differently. Mm-hmm. So it was just hard. Again, like my, the one of the hardest things, was I was hearing everybody, especially at work. And I wasn't mad at these individuals at all. Everyone at work loved Kasie. Everyone, period, just loved Kasie. And they, I would have them, and I think they thought it would maybe console me, but they're like, Kasie spoke to me in my dream, the other night. Little did they know the only thing I'd been asking for from the Lord in that time was a dream, to be able to communicate with Kasie one more time. And I remember them telling me that they thought this or that they had this dream, or they're basically having all of these Kasie encounters, if you will. And I'm like, again, I wasn't mad, but in my mind, I'm thinking,
where's mine?
Yeah. And I'm like, who are you to get that? Why do you deserve that? I should be the one getting that.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think that built up, like my relationship with the Lord. Again, I don't think I ever hated God from this, but I think I just grew distant from him. Mm-hmm. Like you and I were talking about this the other day, like I just kind of stopped trying,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was probably easier. It's like the story, I mean, of how you shared to your mom, like that took so much strength to still worship in the midst of the suffering she was experiencing of losing her daughter, and like, it would have been it's hard to break through that and to physically raise your hand and choose to worship the Lord through something like that. Like that can't be easy, especially when you're hit with so much in the natural and so much in the physical that's happening, and the emotions, and like choosing to break through that and to worship the Lord is harder than to not do that. Right. So like, and it's easier to fall in this lukewarm, like, I don't even care, like, anymore type thing. And not like I'm mad at God or I hate God. It's just, you're more indifferent at this point. It's easier to not try than it is to push through and try.
Yeah. It's just, it was exhausting. And it's like, after going through the trauma of it all, it's like, which is exhausting. And then at that time you think you have to try to feel better, which the Lord is, I mean, it just revealed so much to me and shown me, like, it's not about you trying, it's just letting me love you. Like, that's always been, anytime I counsel somebody, even now, I'm like, just let the Lord love you. Well, how do I do that? And I get it. It took me a few years to be able to get to that point. And so, I was just struggling at that point. A lot of stuff happened after Kasie passed. Me and my family moved to, like, within that year, golly, we moved like 20 different times within 2 miles, just going from house to house. I think we were in a way just kind of looking for something. We needed a change. I think we needed to not have the memory of the house where we found out Kasie passed. And then from that, my parents ended up getting a divorce, which, I don't have any, I'm not mad at them for that. Like, it's not for me to say they should or shouldn't have.
Right.
And what I can say is this, I know the sacrifices, I have a glimpse of sacrifices that, my mom has made over many years, as well as my dad has made, and them sticking it out whenever it would have been easier for them to say no, and just quit. So, but at this point, and I commend my parents for being literally like the most amazing parents and just doing everything for their kids. And but at this point, it was just their time to end it. And so going through that, I ended up moving to Burleson around that time. And so I was kind of escaping everything. I mean, Courtney lives in Burleson, and so I just ended up moving up here. And at that point, I'm like, my life's going to end up being with Courtney anyways. We're getting pretty serious. So I moved up into the Burleson area and was just working and that sort of stuff. But I wasn't really, we would even go to church together sometimes, but there wasn't anything like, again, I was tired of trying. So I wasn't going to like intentionally scope out what church we need to go to. Like in this last season of transition for us, we took one Sunday off, I think, and then we're like, okay, where are we going? We knew it was very important for us to get plugged in. At that time, I was like, I don't care. I'm like, it's not a big deal. Whatever. So again, I just grew distant because for me, I think it was to deal with all the stuff would be to have to acknowledge I didn't want to reopen the wound. I mean, everyone can attest to that. If you've gone through something of any sort of hurt or pain, you don't want to have to open the wound for it to heal and, all that sort of stuff. And so I was just dealing with, again, a lot of unforgiveness for like towards the Lord. I wouldn't say as much towards him, but I was like,
well, I'm sure there are probably some things of like, why didn't you protect her?
Yeah.
Like why did it happen like this? Why wasn't I able to do something to prevent? Like I'm sure it was more so that, not like, I hate you. You never do anything good for me. Like that is just more so like questions, questions for the Lord. And I mean, obviously he can handle it, but that's also part of the grief, especially someone who's so deep spiritually, with the Lord. It's like, why? I would want to know why, and I'm sure sometimes
it's a natural thing.
Yeah. I'm sure sometimes that question still lingers, with you or your siblings or your parents or friends, like I'm sure sometime that question still lingers, and it's more so of choosing to pursue the Lord in that, and just, again, letting him love you, but also being okay with not having the answers,
Yeah.
Which is hard.
Yeah, that was very difficult. And, at the time I was working at Charter. It was a cable company, and I would have a lot of time just in my work van going from place to place. So I'm just by myself, and I would be thinking a lot, obviously, and just going through the pain of this, like the band that I was in, Kasie's loss affected everything for me. Like I grew very distant from that band. Not necessarily relationally. I was just like, I didn't care to be the lead singer of that band anymore. I was like, this is too much work. I'm dealing with too much right now. It's just whatever. And so, anyways, it was just a lot of unforgiveness towards the Lord, not understanding why. I had unforgiveness towards the person who did it. But most of the unforgiveness was just for myself, just because, again, it was me. It was me. And I remember there was one time, I was praying for a dream for so long to have, and I was in my room crying. This was before I moved to Burleson, and I was crying and crying and crying. My mom came in, and she was like, "What's wrong?" I mean, she knows what's wrong. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm so mad that everyone else gets to have a dream of Kasie and gets to talk to her whenever I'm the one who was stupid, didn't talk to her, and I've been asking to, and they're just getting it. It makes no sense to me. And I was like, I was so mad, and my mom just like gave me so much comfort during that time. And she said, maybe the Lord knows it would just be too hard for you to handle this time. Yeah. Like the way like her and my dad would like step in at times to continue, like, that's gotta be the hardest thing. Like they lost a daughter, but they're still taking care of their kids. And so just dealing with the unforgiveness on myself and like longing to have that experience with Kasie through a dream or something, it just wasn't happening. So, I ended up, I was driving one day, and I would hear the Lord say to pray for the person who murdered her. And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, no way. Like, I have the most unforgiveness for me, but I'm not praying for him. Like, that's not, Lord, that's you, not me. And so, but I just kept on hearing him say it. And so I could not refer to him by name. It was like, to say his name was disgusting to me. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like literally just disgusting. I could not say his name. And so I would just say, Lord, I just pray for him that he would experience, some grace or something. It was very like, it wasn't because I felt it. It was because the Lord was telling me to. And then one day I remember hearing a song on the radio, and it was like, forgiveness really doesn't free the other person as much as it really frees you. And so that was the first day I prayed for him by name. And so I just asked, Lord, to show grace to him. And because I began to realize, like, the Lord loves everybody. He doesn't love what this person did, but if Jesus died for everybody, that means he died for the murderers too.
He still wants him to enter into his kingdom.
He still does. And so, and
that's so hard in the flesh.
It's a hard pill to swallow. And it's like, here's the thing, as much as I don't want to agree with that at times, that's the nature of God. That's just who he is.
Well, and I think it's easier to be like, oh, we're going to do a prison ministry for all these guys. And like, it touches us to see all these men singing praises to the Lord in prison, even though that there's probably murderers and, everything you can imagine, crime wise in that prison. But it's like, it's easier whenever it's not you personally. So it's like, man, that's so cool. I'm watching the Lord change their lives. But like, when you never think those things are going to happen to you, you never think you're going to have a tie like that to somebody that is in prison, and so to be that connected to that is like, no, what I mean? Like, it's like, I can't do it in the flesh, but I really like how you said the forgiveness, it doesn't free the other person as much as it frees you. And I think that was what the Lord was speaking to you. It's like, I want you to be free from it. So I need you to forgive. It's not that I need your prayers for this guy. It's not that I need your prayers for really anybody, but like, I need you to pray to me and talk to me and open your heart to me and release things so that way I can free you. Because, at that point, he's like, I care about you. In this moment, and I want you to know that I'm here for, you know what I mean? Like, it was just
and the enemy had done such a great job at convincing me that to not forgive him, because it was like I was holding on to so much resentment towards this guy, which was really misplaced resentment on myself, and so I didn't want to forgive him, and then I just, again, like I said, and you just, echoed, it was just realizing this is going to free me. It'll, to a point, it helps free the person of any guilt. Now, I have never had the opportunity to get to speak to him. I honestly would love the opportunity to be able to meet him face to face one day and to tell him I forgive you. That would still be hard. Even after all the healing I've gone through up to this point. To do it face to face, that's still, I know if I ever get the opportunity, that's going to be difficult. And so, but again, like, the nature of God, like, does not change. And so, so I began praying for that towards him, and every day began to pray his name, and still being kind of distant from the Lord. And there was this specific time where I really feel like the journey kind of didn't necessarily end, but it like propelled me to the point of,
to the next chapter.
And I was dog sitting at my dad's in Waxahachie. I was having to go back to Burleson for school, back and forth that whole week. It was like 2 weeks actually. So and so I'd be driving at 6 a.m. to get to class, or whatever time it was. And on one specific day I was driving on 67 going through Alvarado, and is like the way I explain it to everybody is like I was driving in the driver's seat, and I just almost felt like I saw the Lord show up in the passenger seat, and he just said, like, you've been still for so long, like you haven't you've been paralyzed,
Mm-hmm.
and not because anything has happened. It's just you aren't moving. So he's like, it's time for you to pick up your mat and walk. And it just reminded me of the scripture. Like
Sure.
it's just a testimony of that scripture that he echoed to me. And that's really whenever forgiveness for myself began to take place, and whenever the Lord ministered to me. I remember calling you that night, like, Courtney, I think I want to start like going to churches and playing music again. And I started getting business cards typed up and all this stuff, and getting you involved. And it was just really exciting because forgiveness really ended up pushed. And this was like 2.5 years after Casey's passing, keep in mind. So it took time, but it was just still a process. And I just really felt the Lord say, it's time to get up and walk. Like, not moving will kill you. So, and I'm like, I've got to get up. And so I actually ended up going to a church and saying, hey, I need to, if you'll have a position open for me still, because they've been asking me for the past few years to be there. Like, if the opportunity's still there, like, I'd love to come be your youth pastor, your worship pastor. And so it actually worked out. So, and I was still going through some healing through there, because the pastor would even help me and counsel me on some stuff to say, this is how the Lord feels about this individual, you know?
Well, and that particular pastor had gone through loss to where he had loss that he had felt guilty of too. And so there was, now looking back on it too, it's like he put that individual in your life to, because he's relatable. And it was somebody that not only in a position, of a pastor that, is respected, but of one that is relatable, had been through something like that, and has dealt with seasons of guilt and shame for the loss that they experienced. And so for you to be connected with somebody like that, like, especially now looking back on it, I was like, that was the Lord,
Yep.
Totally the Lord that put you there. So,
and honestly, I can say for every single pastor, I was just thinking about this today, for every pastor that we've had, like, I've needed that pastor. Yeah, I really have, every single one. And I've been the Lord was like, Kenneth, be very thankful for every pastor you've had, who has either administered, my nature to you, or has helped bring you into more of the reality of the kingdom, whatever it may be. And not just pastors, but there's many individuals too. And, this whole process of forgiveness, like, it still took time, even after I finally picked up my mat and began walking again. And because, again, I wasn't pursuing the Lord. I wasn't like not pursuing him, but honestly, to not do anything is to not pursue him. So I wasn't pursuing him. So at this point in time, I was pursuing him intentionally. And it is at that point, whenever, stuff started to shift. Like, if I never would have picked up my mat and walked, I wouldn't have been encouraged by that pastor to marry you, where he said, Kenneth, why aren't you marrying this girl? Just marry her. And I remember telling him,
who cares if you're making, nothing a week?
Exactly. And I'm like, how can I go with their parents? He's like, who cares? Just marry the girl. Like, you'll never be ready. If I never would have picked up my mat and walked, I wouldn't have married Courtney whenever I did. Who knows if it would have happened? I would still imagine it would have, but there's a whole what if series of that. What if could have happened. So the Lord really just came to me, and really through that whole process, Courtney was always there, like, always, her and her family. Like, her family has been such a beautiful blessing in my life, and how, even Courtney's mom, because we weren't dating very long whenever Kasie passed.
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And so whenever Courtney's mom, I was visiting their house one night, and she had made me this, Casey's big old thing was hope. Hope is an anchor for the soul. And so I actually ended up getting a tattoo for it. It was a tattoo she always wanted to get, and she didn't get to, so I got it. And her mom made that phrase or something on a canvas, and I remember she gave it to me, and I just bawled my eyes out. I couldn't even do it. I'm like, oh. But her family's shown me so much love. They really, in a way, like, adopted me in, and just so thankful for every single one of them, and to to take care of just a broken kid, and it really meant the world to me. So, but Courtney was there. She walked through me with a lot of stuff, and I mean, the forgiveness journey took time. And I guess I don't know if we're ending right now. I know we're talking a long time, so and we're probably missing a lot of details, but I don't think.
Well, I have one detail I want you to share.
Okay.
You can finish your thought if you want, but so you mentioned the dream, and so I want you to share that. He'd been asking for a dream.
Yeah. So.
And how long did it take?
So, Kasie passed in 2013. Began working at this church in 2015. Yeah, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2015, I ended up proposing to Courtney, and so we're getting the wedding all together. Excuse me. Getting it planned, and I was still asking the Lord for a dream. I was still just broken from it, and again, like even this is so good. Like even though I picked up my mat and was obedient to walk, didn't mean everything just went away.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had to continually seek the Lord every day, and if I gave up, I would have died. I mean, figuratively, literally, whatever it may be. Like I just would have just died from it, and so, yeah, I remember asking the Lord for a dream, and I remember I was scheduled to preach, and my first sermon I ever preached was on hope, actually. And I was scheduled to preach, and in real life, well, in my dream, it was my wedding day at this church. And so I remember, people coming in, I was just kind of saying hi to individuals, and I go to the front door of the church basically, and hold the door open, and walks Kasie. And I was just like, what the heck? And I'm looking, it's one of those things like I was looking at her knowing that she was gone, but almost unaware of the realization that she was gone. It was just very strange. It's like I knew she wasn't alive anymore, but I just remember looking at her, and she just smiled. That's all she did. And then we just stared at each other for a few seconds, and then she went and took her seat inside, and I ended up waking up, and I was like, honestly, my first reaction was I was actually very mad, because I had forgotten why I'd been asking for a dream. And so I remember I woke up that morning, I was crying like, Lord, why would you do that? Why would you let me see her? Like I didn't get to talk to her or anything. And he said, Kenneth, he just reminded me, he's like, Kenneth, you needed to see your sister at this time. And so I let you see her. And I don't even want to say it like that, like not like he was withholding her. He just knew the perfect time to give me that dream. And so I got to see Kasie, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't really had a dream where in the 9 years that she's been gone, where I've had with her in it, where I talked to her. I don't think I've had one, which I'm okay with, like, because I've had so much healing from it, and it's just great to be able to see her. And like, I think, one of the things that I wish so bad was, I don't even, at this point, I don't really even want Kasie to be back for me. I want my kids to be able to experience Kasie. I want my niece and nephew to be able to experience Kasie. I want, my sisters, Kendall, Kristen, my dad, and my mom to be able to have their daughter and sister back. And it's like, I would so much long for that if they could have her and me never have her at all. Because like we've all healed in a really beautiful way. And I think like parts of my immediate family and extended family are always going to be healing in some aspect from this. And so, but forgiveness, like, is like the ultimate key to the freedom I experienced. And so, yeah, it was a long journey. Kasie is still like one of the most, I rarely will talk whenever people ask me, how many sisters do you have? I'm like, I have 3. And they're like, well, what are the names? Well, I have Kendall, I have Kasie, and I have Kristen. And it's hard for me. Like I never really talk about Kasie in the past tense, just because I'm like, she's not in past tense to me, like she's very much alive, more so than I realized. So anyway, yeah, a really long story for you. So if you didn't stick around, you could have paused it and hopefully come back later. So, but yeah, so, what we wanted to do with this platform is really to we're finding it, especially after the infertility episode and seeing how many people that touched, to share periodically just more testimonies and stories of what the Lord's done in our lives and how he has proved his goodness to us in every season of life. And I'm confident that for those who we know, like, who may still struggle with Kasie's passing, and or even if you're there and you're struggling with something else completely different, to know like the Lord is still pursuing you and he's still actively running after you. So
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so I don't know if you have anything you want to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that story. Obviously I know the story, but I appreciate you always being so vulnerable and so just like, I guess, honest about your journey and how and like what you've experienced. And it's not an easy thing to do, especially it's like you were mentioning in the past, like reopening that wound, like in some ways, even though there is healing, like there's always going to be like a mark, that you kind of have to expose. And so I really appreciate you sharing that with us. It's like you said, if anyone that is still struggling with Kasie's passing, like I hope you find comfort and strength in this, in Kenneth's testimony. Anyone who's experienced loss yourself, I pray that you find some kind of hope and strength, and you can always reach out to Kenneth. You can reach out to myself as well, but I think Kenneth has probably a lot more wisdom to shed on loss, than I even have. But yeah, we really appreciate your story and we appreciate your time, and
yeah. Well, I hope this has brought some light to you. If you have any questions, just more like, I know there may be a lot of things like of details like you may want to know. If so, you can again just reach out to me and I can go over whatever. But again, the main point of this is a story of a beautiful woman named Kasie, who had died at 23 but is living with the Lord, and a story of forgiveness. And I hope if anything you gotten from this is just don't carry unforgiveness anymore. Really, that's easier said than done. So all I can tell you then is just begin picking up your mat and just walk. Just start moving towards his direction, in the direction of the Lord. And I really believe that as you continue to seek him and pursue him, that you're going to find exactly what you're looking for. So anyways, we love you guys. Thank y'all so much for stopping by.
Thank y'all.
We again hope this encourages you. We will post more episodes soon. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.